Now, this article lists 12 major points regarding this shadow war being played out while we walk around with masks, afraid to even look at each other. I'll only state a few of them. It states, the global economy and the economies of most states, meaning governments, have been dramatically weakened, and they will remain relatively weakened and transformed for some years, in many cases for decades. This means that economic deprivation will reach more pervasively down into the mass of society, reversing the trend of the past 7 decades. It will exacerbate the polarization of societies, but seems likely to push the trend towards forms of nationalism more than it will reinforce the ideology of globalism. Well, this attitude is essentially every man for himself, within that particular nation or state and among nations, even if that means robbery and violence. So the polarization of these nations means that you're going to have the wealthy against the unwealthy. It'll even come down to racial terms across the board. And there's signs of that clear because it's underway at this moment in other nations and even here in the United States. So let's continue with this article. The power of central governments has been dramatically increased, and the rights and freedoms of individuals constrained. By late March 2020, the situation in most Western societies had approached a quasi-martial law environment with little social resistance. Now, why a little social resistance? Well, in the Bible, it states, and Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. Therefore, if someone is telling you and me that there is a threat against our lives and is offering us guidance and imposing rules to evade that threat, then we would be foolish not to follow along or to comply. However, the manner through which this threat is conveyed, described, and in the mass media popularized also bears on the extent to which we will give up of that which we will give up in an effort to save our lives. So in other words, the more the threat is bolstered and we perceive that, then we're willing to give up more. This is the power of the mass media, which is owned by the synagogue of Satan. Well, what have we given up? Take off your mask if you're at home and look in the mirror. What have you given up? What have we given up? Have we given up our freedoms? Have we given up our friendships? Have we given up our jobs and businesses? Have we given up our money? Have we given up our medical supplies because the government asked for them? Even more, have we given up the distrust that a government with a record of victimizing its citizens through lies, deceit, and treachery has earned? This government has earned our distrust. Have we given that up? And in the end, will we give up our humanity and sanity when it gets to the point of every man for himself? So the fear of contracting the coronavirus, along with the government's established social guidelines and punitive actions arising from it, has produced distrust and fear among Americans and eliminated the thought, not to mention the need, to display public dissent against the enforcement of draconian rules that violate the U.S. Constitution. Now, why must the Constitution, and I'm speaking to white people, why must the Constitution always be the casualty when so-called national emergencies strike, especially when the government officials who announce these national emergencies are elected to uphold the Constitution at all costs? You're elected to uphold it, but it becomes a casualty under your watch.